Dr. Kim, could you tell us what some of the challenges are associated with irregular standardized assessments?
Yes. So this is a very common practice throughout the world. And I'm from the States, but it's a common practice there as well, where it's for years the tradition has been running an annual or every 2 years type of global assessment to evaluate the progress of learners in a school system. And unfortunately, with that kind of infrequent assessment, you run into multiple problems. The first most devastating thing is when you have a kid with a standardized assessment run at the end of the school year. By the time the assessment's administered, the results come back, and teachers receive the results, there's no time to provide any sort of intervention before the end of the year. So you have a child who's, the test results come back and they're below the 30th percentile, meaning they're performing only better than a third of their peers. Well, guess what? The school year ends, summer rolls around, nothing can be done, and then the school year starts again, and the cycle repeats itself. So when you're only assessing at a minimum once a year, at a maximum once a year, or even worse, I know in Australia is once every 2 years, there's no opportunity to do timely intervention to ensure kids are keeping up and getting where they need to be by the end of each school year. So that's one of the biggest problems. Number two is standardized assessments measure some things with respect to global progress, but those are big picture targets where there's thousands of core component skills that make up each domain. Like for instance, reading comprehension, you get one score, but inside that one score, there's thousands of skills required to impact how well a child does on that domain. And so when you're only seeing one score, it's not prescriptive inside of identifying what's really missing in a child's repertoire that needs to be strengthened such that kids are performing better. So it's really not prescriptive for teachers to know what to fix.
And that's a massive challenge to parents, isn't it? To understand, my child's underperforming at school, but actually the school can't tell me why.
Well, and sadly, again, I could talk about this for an hour or more. Parents think that standardized test scores and teachers are the be-all end-all. Like if a child's performing poorly on a standardized instrument, that is the last word. And there's again so many problems with evaluating learning based on one measure.
Yeah.
And like what we know in behavioral and learning science is that you can't understand learning without looking at learning over time. So when you take one assessment, that's a measure of performance in that moment. So like, who knows what could have happened with that kid? They could have been sick, it could have been loud in the room or cold in the room, they could have been distracted, they could have gotten off by one bubble and the whole test looks wrong. And so even with a poor test score, that doesn't even tell you whether or not that kid really is doing poorly in that subject area, because it could have just been that day, right? So that's a problem. But if a kid is performing poorly in a subject area, you're not going to fix it by running a standardized assessment. You're going to fix it by running an assessment that allows you to look at core skills that are the components involved in all of those big global skills, and strengthening and fixing those through mastery-based practice. But unfortunately, people don't understand that, so the only thing to do is label kids with learning disabilities and put them in special classrooms and blame it on the kid, rather than evaluating a kid's learning history and core skill set and going in and fixing that prescriptively.